With one burning glance from her eye.
1965, the year rock and roll's king became yesterday's news. While Elvis Presley was trapped making beach party movies and singing to puppets, four guys from Liverpool were rewriting every rule of popular music. In just 12 months, the Beatles dominated the charts, sold out stadiums, and made albums that actually mattered as RT. Meanwhile, Elvis couldn't crack the top 10. His albums barely sold, and the world stopped caring. Today, we're counting down 15 songs from 1965 that prove exactly when and how the Beatles stole Elvis's crown, and he never got it back. Let's dive in. Number 15, the song that made Elvis a punchline. February 1965. Elvis releases Do the Clam from the movie Girl Happy. It's a dance song about doing the clam, whatever that means. The song peaked at number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100. For context, every Elvis single in the 1950s hit the top 5. Most went to number 1. But here's the real tragedy. Elvis didn't choose this song. Colonel Tom Parker locked him into movie contracts that forced him to sing whatever the studio wanted. While the Beatles were in the studio experimenting with new sounds, Elvis was on a Hollywood soundstage pretending to enjoy singing about shellfish. The critics were brutal, fans were confused, and British invasion bands were laughing all the way to the bank. This wasn't the Elvis who shook the world in 1956. This was a man trapped in a golden cage, watching his kingdom crumble. Number 14. The Beatles prove they can write a better love song before breakfast than Elvis could all year. Released in the US in February 1965, 8 days a week hit number 1 and stayed there for 2 weeks. Listen to the production. That fade-in opening? Revolutionary. Nobody was doing that in 1965. The harmonies are impossibly tight, the energy is infectious, and the lyrics are clever without being corny. Compare that to Do the Clam. There's no comparison, it's not even close. The Beatles were evolving with every single. Growth, experimentation, confidence. They were artists in complete control of their destiny. Elvis was singing songs written by Hollywood hacks who'd never had a hit in their lives. The gap was already massive, and 1965 was just getting started. Number 13. Elvis's last gasp of relevance, and it was recorded 6 years earlier. April 1965. RCA scrambles to find something, anything, that might compete with the Beatles. They dig through the vault and find Crying in the Chapel, recorded back in 1960 when Elvis still cared. It hit number 3 in the US, Elvis's highest chart position in years. But here's the heartbreaking truth. RCA had to raid the archives because Elvis wasn't recording anything worth releasing. His current material was so weak, a 5-year-old gospel song was his best option. The Beatles were recording new masterpieces every month. Elvis was living off past glory, like a retired athlete showing highlight reels. And even this success was bittersweet. It proved Elvis could still connect with audiences if he sang the right material. But Colonel Parker kept him locked in those movie contracts. A glimpse of what could have been, then right back to the beach party movies.
She's got a ticket to ride.
Number 12. The Beatles invent a new guitar sound and change rock music forever. April 1965. The same month Elvis released that old gospel song, the Beatles dropped Ticket to Ride. That opening guitar riff? John Lennon called it the first heavy metal record ever made. Listen to that droning, hypnotic quality. And Ringo's drumming, that's not standard pop drumming, that's proto-rock power. The song hit number 1 in both the US and UK, but more importantly, it showed the Beatles weren't content being a pop band. They were pushing boundaries, taking risks, evolving. Every Beatles single in 1965 sounded different from the last. They were restless, ambitious, and hungry. Elvis was comfortable, complacent, cashing checks and counting the days until his next movie wrapped. The king was sleepwalking while the princes were storming the castle gates. Number 11. An entire album that screamed, "I've given up." March 1965. The Girl Happy soundtrack peaks at number 8 on the album charts. Sounds respectable, right? Wrong. It sold 450,000 copies. For Elvis Presley in 1965, that was a disaster. His 1950s album sold millions, plural. The album is 11 songs of forgettable movie filler. No artistic vision, no passion, no soul. Just contractual obligations set to music by people who didn't care. Meanwhile, the Beatles were about to release an album that would hold the #1 spot for 9 straight weeks and redefine what a pop album could be. Elvis's label RCA was panicking. His movie studio MGM was confused why the formula stopped working. And Elvis himself? He knew. He told friends he felt like a joke, a caricature of his former self. But he was trapped. 3 movies a year, soundtracks nobody wanted, a manager who cared more about money than music. The crown was slipping off his head, and Elvis could feel every inch of it sliding away. Number 10. The Beatles make a movie soundtrack that's actually brilliant? July 1965. The Beatles release Help, both the movie and the album. The title track hits #1 in the US and UK simultaneously. But here's what separated the Beatles from Elvis. Their movie soundtracks had depth. Help isn't just a catchy pop song. John Lennon later admitted it was a genuine cry for help about the pressures of fame. The album also included You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, The Night Before, and You're Going to Lose That Girl. Every song could have been a single. Compare that to Girl Happy's throwaway tracks. The Beatles treated their movie music like it mattered. Elvis treated his like a paycheck. And the numbers proved it. Help sold over 3 million copies in 1965 alone. That's nearly 7 times what Girl Happy sold. The gap wasn't closing. It was becoming a canyon.
Gotta keep 'em satisfied.
Number 9. The moment Elvis became a parody of himself. November 1965. Elvis releases Harum, Scarum, a movie where he plays a movie star kidnapped by assassins in the Middle East. Yes, really. The soundtrack peaked at number 8 on the album charts, but sold only 400,000 copies. Even worse than Girl Happy. Critics called it embarrassing. Fans called it unwatchable. Elvis himself reportedly called it the worst movie I ever made. The songs? Forgettable Orientalist nonsense with titles like Go East, Young Man, and Mirage. No artistic merit, no cultural sensitivity, just a cash grab wrapped in a turban. Meanwhile, the Beatles were about to release an album that would change music forever. An album Elvis would listen to in private and reportedly say, "That's what I should be doing." But he wasn't doing it. He was wearing harem pants and singing to camels while his crown rolled away into the desert sand.
Suddenly, I'm not half the man I used to be.
Number 8. The song that proved the Beatles were more than just a rock band. September 1965. Yesterday hits #1 in the US and stays there for 4 weeks. Paul McCartney wrote it. Performed it solo with just acoustic guitar and a string quartet. No drums, no electric guitars, no rock and roll. And it became the most covered song in history. Over 2,200 recorded versions. More than any Elvis song. More than any song from the 1950s. This was the Beatles' genius. They refused to be boxed in. They could do rock, pop, folk, classical, whatever the song demanded. Elvis had the voice to do this. He'd proven it with gospel music. But Colonel Parker would never let him record something this vulnerable, this artistic, this uncommercial. Yesterday showed the world that the Beatles weren't a teen fad. They were legitimate artists creating timeless music. Elvis was still the king in name, but the Beatles were building an empire that would outlast any throne. Number 7. The song title that became a tragic metaphor. Yes, Elvis literally sang to a puppet in Girl Happy, and the song was called Puppet on a String. You can't make this up. The irony is almost too painful. Elvis Presley, the man who revolutionized American music, who made parents fear for their daughter's virtue, who moved like no white man had ever moved before, was now singing to a wooden puppet controlled by strings. Just like Elvis was controlled by Colonel Parker's strings, the movie contracts, the soundtrack obligations, the complete lack of artistic freedom. In 1956, Elvis was dangerous. In 1965, he was safe, neutered, packaged for family consumption. The Beatles were still dangerous in 1965, still unpredictable, still making parents nervous and teenagers scream. That's the difference between an artist and a product. The Beatles controlled their destiny. Elvis was a puppet on a string.
There's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend.
Number 6. The Beatles end 1965 by proving they're unstoppable. December 1965. We Can Work It Out backed with Day Tripper, a double A-side single that hit number 1 in both the US and UK. Think about that. Both sides of the single were good enough to be number 1 hits. That's not luck. That's mastery. We Can Work It Out has Paul's optimism fighting John's pessimism in the bridge. It's sophisticated songwriting disguised as a pop song. The Waltz Time Bridge, revolutionary for a rock single, and Day Tripper? That riff is one of the most iconic in rock history. Instantly recognizable, impossible to forget. The Beatles released this in December, their 6th major single of 1965. All 6 were hits. All 6 were different from each other. All 6 pushed boundaries. Elvis released 3 movie soundtracks in 1965. All 3 sounded the same. All 3 were forgettable. The Beatles weren't just winning, they were lapping Elvis on a track he used to own.
Do not disturb, it's time to make love.
Number 5. Elvis's label gets so desperate they don't even wait for the movie. December 1965. RCA releases a soundtrack for a movie that won't come out until 1966. That's how badly they needed the product. The album doesn't even chart in the top 40. For Elvis Presley, in 1965. That's catastrophic. The songs are exactly what you'd expect. Generic, lifeless, paint-by-numbers movie filler. I'll Be Back. Stop, Look and Listen. Never Say Yes. Titles you've already forgotten. RCA executives were in full panic mode. Their biggest star was becoming irrelevant. The radio wasn't playing his new music. Teenagers weren't buying his records. And the Beatles were everywhere. Elvis knew it too. Friends said he'd lock himself in his room at Graceland and listen to Beatles albums, trying to understand what they had that he'd lost. The answer was simple. Freedom. Artistic control. The courage to evolve. Elvis had none of those things. And 1965 was the year it finally killed him commercially.
Baby, you can drive my car.
Number 4. The album that changed everything. December 1965. The Beatles released Rubber Soul, an album with no filler, no throwaway tracks, no movie tie-ins. Just 14 songs of pure artistic ambition. Norwegian Wood with sitar, In My Life with Baroque piano, Nowhere Man with existential lyrics, Michelle in French. The album held number 1 for 6 weeks in the US. It sold over 1.2 million copies in the first month alone. But more importantly, it made other artists step up their game. Bob Dylan heard it and went electric. Brian Wilson heard it and made Pet sounds. The entire music industry heard it and realized albums could be art, not just collections of singles. Elvis heard it too. And according to people close to him, he cried. Because he knew he could have made something this good. He had the talent, he had the voice, he had the charisma. But he didn't have the freedom. And in 1965, freedom was everything. Rubber Soul was the Beatles' declaration of independence. Elvis was still in chains. Number 3. The day the Beatles proved they were bigger than Elvis ever was. August 15th, 1965. Shea Stadium, New York. 55,600 screaming fans. The largest concert audience in history. The Beatles couldn't hear themselves play. The screaming was so loud it drowned out the amplifiers. Girls were fainting. Cops were overwhelmed. It was chaos. And it was glorious. Elvis had played big venues, but nothing like this. This was Beatlemania at its absolute peak. This was a cultural phenomenon meeting mass hysteria. The concert grossed $304,000, a record that stood for years. But the real impact was psychological. Every teenager in America saw that footage and understood. The Beatles were the biggest thing on the planet. Bigger than Elvis had ever been. Bigger than anyone had ever been. Elvis watched this from Graceland. He never toured in 1965, he was too busy making movies. While the Beatles were conquering stadiums, Elvis was trapped on sound stages. The crown wasn't just slipping anymore, it was gone. Number 2, the numbers don't lie. 1965 was a massacre. Let's look at the cold, hard facts. The Beatles in 1965, 6 #1 singles in the US, 4 #1 albums, dominated the charts for a combined 32 weeks at #1, sold over 10 million albums in the US alone. Shea Stadium, largest concert in history. Rubber Soul, Album of the Year Elvis in 1965. 1. Top 10 single, Crying, in the Chapel, recorded in 1960. 0. #1 hits. 3 movie soundtracks that barely cracked the top 10 combined album sales under 2 million. No concerts, no tours, no live performances. Critical ridicule and fan disappointment. This wasn't a competition, it was an execution. The British invasion didn't just challenge Elvis, it made him irrelevant. And the Beatles led that invasion with ruthless efficiency. Elvis still had his movies, he still had his mansion, he still had his money. But he'd lost the only thing that mattered: the music, the culture, the crown. Number 1. One Beatles B-side was better than Elvis's entire 1965 output. I Feel Fine was technically released in late 1964, but it dominated early 1965, hitting #1 in January. That opening, that's guitar feedback. Intentional, controlled feedback. The first time it was ever used as a musical element in a pop song. John Lennon played that note, let it feedback through the amplifier, and the Beatles said, "That's brilliant. Let's open the song with it." That's innovation. That's artists in control, experimenting, taking risks, pushing boundaries. Now compare that to anything Elvis released in 1965. Any song, any soundtrack, any single. There's no comparison. Elvis wasn't experimenting, he wasn't innovating, he wasn't even trying. I Feel Fine represents everything the Beatles were in 1965. Bold, creative, fearless, revolutionary. Elvis's 1965 catalog represents everything he'd become. Safe, predictable, controlled, irrelevant. One guitar feedback note contains more artistic courage than 3 Elvis movie soundtracks combined. That's not an opinion. That's just the truth of 1965. So what happened after 1965? Elvis eventually woke up. The 1968 comeback special proved he could still be dangerous, still be relevant, still be the king, when he wanted to be. But he never got the crown back. The Beatles had it. Then the Stones had it. Then Led Zeppelin had it. Elvis became a legend, an icon, a symbol of a bygone era. The Beatles? They kept evolving. Sgt. Pepper, The White Album, Abbey Road. They didn't just steal Elvis's crown in 1965, they melted it down and forged something entirely new. 1965 was the year rock and roll grew up, the year albums became art, the year musicians demanded creative control, the year the old guard fell and the new generation took over. Elvis was the king of the 1950s, the Beatles were the kings of the 1960s, and 1965 was the year the throne changed hands forever. These 15 songs prove it. The numbers prove it. History proves it. The king is dead. Long live the kings. If you lived through 1965, drop a comment and tell us where you were when you realized the Beatles had taken over. And if you want more deep dives into the moments that changed rock history, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, keep the voltage high.